Hello, my name is Josh Martin, and I'm a graduate student in the College Student Services Administration program at the College of St. Rose in Albany, New York. I have developed this presentation on Schlossberg's transition theory as part of a class project on closings and transitions. This Vodcast is a way for me to experiment with different presentation and distribution mediums, as well as another way to collaborate and share with the members of my group. Please feel free to comment. Any feedback or suggestions would be appreciated. If you have not already done so, please download and print the PDF document titled Schlossberg Transition Theory Workshop Handout. As you can see from the objectives shown, the purpose of this workshop is to provide participants with an opportunity to learn more about transitions as defined and modeled by Nancy Schlossberg. By the end of this workshop, participants will be able to recognize, identify, and define the various aspects of Schlossberg's transition theory and model. We'll have practiced applying this model to 2 different case study scenarios, and be able to identify and apply the 5 stages of the Cormier and Hackney model for assisting individuals in transitions. If I were to poll workshop participants about their thoughts and opinions on transitions, I'm sure I'd come up with a variety of responses with some overlapping themes and some divergent themes. For the purpose of this workshop, I want to frame transitions within the definition provided by Nancy Schlossberg as any event or non-event that results in changed relationships, routines, assumptions, and roles. In this definition, an event can be understood as meaning something that happens, whether we thought it would happen or not. In order for a transition to be an event transition, there has to be an action of some kind. Non-events can be understood as meaning something that one thought would happen but didn't. A lack of action characterizes non-event transitions. We'll cover more of this in a moment. Schlossberg cautions that there are additional factors impacting whether or not a certain change can actually be defined as a transition based on her definition. Schlossberg emphasized the role of individual perception in determining if a change could be characterized as a transition. For example, a company can change an organizational chart resulting in a changed structure. However, if the individuals working within the company continue to conduct themselves in the same way after the reorganization, then there was no true transition. The individuals did not change their relationships, routines, assumptions, and roles. They simply continued as usual. Additionally, transitions can have outcomes that are positive, negative, and neutral. You could end up in a better place after a transition, a worse place, or may find that you broke even. Also, an individual's ability to navigate a transition is impacted by their assets and liabilities, which can also be conceptualized as the ratio of their power to their load, which we will discuss later in the presentation. Returning to the types of transitions, there are 2 types, each with different triggers. There are anticipated event transitions and unanticipated event transitions. For example, an expected job promotion would be an anticipated event because it was an action that one expected to happen. This promotion would result in new and changed relationships and roles at work. A surprise promotion would be an example of an unanticipated event because it was an unexpected action resulting in changed relationships and roles. Non-event transitions are those expected actions that do not happen. Returning to our job promotion example, let's say you expected it to happen, however the company decided instead to promote someone else. This would be an example of personal and resultant non-event transitions. This non-event directly impacted you as it was related to your career goals and was caused by the actions of management to promote someone else. This event could become delayed. Say the individual promoted is being placed on a 6-month probationary period, after which their promotion will become permanent or they will return to their original position, at which time another individual may be promoted. The transition then becomes delayed. It may still happen. An example of a ripple non-event transition would be your partner's experience based on your non-event. They would experience things based on your not receiving the anticipated promotion. Confused? If so, don't worry. This is a lot of information. Let me introduce you to 2 students who may be able to help us get a better grasp on the different types of transitions. Meet Vicky. Go ahead and pause the video in order to read through Vicky's case. After you feel you have a good understanding of what's happening with Vicky, continue playing the video and meet James. Again, pause the video and read through James's case. Once you feel you have a good understanding of Vicky and James's situation, answer the following questions based on the definition of transition and the types of transitions presented. Go ahead and pause the video while you work through these questions using the handout provided. In order to better understand transitions and the experiences of individuals in transition, it is important to consider the context of the situation, of the transition. For example, What is your relationship to the transition? Is this your transition or someone else's? If this is someone else's, how close are you to them? Your experience with the transition will be different if it is your best friend or partner versus if it is a neighbor you are friendly with or a casual acquaintance. Aside from relationships, it is also important to consider the setting in which the transition is taking place and how these different settings exist as connected systems. For example, are there changes in the community that may impact your work and your family? The current recession and economic recovery are examples of unanticipated events that have caused many transitions in the community, which have had ripple effects on individuals' family and work lives. In determining the impact of a transition, one has to consider how this transition affects your daily living via your assets and liabilities. Personally, I prefer to present assets and liabilities within the framework of Howard McCluskey's theory of margin. The theory of margin states that an individual's success in any given situation is based on the ratio between their load and their power. What do they have to deal with, and how much energy do they have to deal with it? An individual with more power than load will probably have an easier time coping with a transition when compared with an individual with more load than power because they have a greater amount of resources or supports to draw upon. We'll revisit this concept later when we discuss self, support, and strategies. Schlossberg's transition process conceptualizes transitions as having three distinct phases: moving in, moving through, and moving out. Using this transition process, let's revisit Vicky and James. Pause the video and answer the questions under Vicky and James 2. Schlossberg identified the following 4 factors as impacting how well an individual will cope with a transition. These 4 factors, also known as the 4 S's, are: situation, having a clear understanding of what happened, why, and what it means; self, those internal coping resources within an individual; support, the external or social support system available to an individual; and strategies, how self and support come together in a variety of ways to produce healthy actions. Let's consider each of these individually. First, the situation. Schlossberg identified the following 8 factors as important in order to fully examine an individual's transition. Go ahead and pause the video. Once you've read through the 8 factors presented under situation, advance the video to Vicky and James 3. And see if you can identify the trigger, control, timing, role change, and duration for Vicky and James's current situation. Self, the second of the 4 S's, consists of 2 categories: personal and demographic characteristics and psychological resources. Who do you think would cope better with a transition? An individual with a low socioeconomic status and poor health with low self-esteem, or an individual with a middle to high socioeconomic status and good health with high self-esteem? Go ahead and pause the video to consider that question. The third S, support, deals with the social support system available to individuals. Go ahead and pause the video on the support screen. Come up with examples of the 4 different types of support. Consider which type of support would offer affect and affirmation as opposed to aid or honest feedback. Depending on the type of transition, which supports would be stable and which supports might change. The fourth and final S, strategies, involves the merging of self and support into the development of different types of strategies that allow us to either change our transition, change the meaning of the transition, and or manage any stress associated with the transition. In order to help us provide assistance to individuals and to ourselves in a transition, Cormier and Hackney developed a 5-stage model. As with any helping relationship, their model begins with relationship building or the development of rapport. While relationship building in this context speaks to a therapeutic or helping relationship, it is also reminiscent of the third S, support. The second stage is assessment. One could utilize a variety of assessment instruments at this stage. However, recall that Schlossberg provided 8 factors to consider in the first S, situation. Goal setting and interventions are similar to Schlossberg's final S, strategies. What do you want to accomplish, and what actions are you going to take to do so? Let's revisit the case of James. For our final activity, let's say that you have been working with James for 3 sessions and have developed a rapport with him and conducted an assessment, which was part of the third Vicky and James activity. Take a few moments and develop 2 goal statements for James to consider based on your understanding of his case. After you've developed the goal statements, consider interventions or actions that James can take to achieve these goals. Do your best to develop 3 interventions for each goal statement. Go ahead and pause the video. You may need to refer to the strategies frame in the handout The categories and coping modes may assist you in developing your goal statements and interventions. The following resources were used in the development of this presentation and Vodcast. Thank you for viewing.